Now come the bunker busters. In the Afghan night, U.S. bombers try to drive Taliban forces out of hiding, while Afghan rebels, the United Front, fight the Taliban on the ground. In a new campaign against terrorists, the U.S. displays their faces and puts a price on their heads. The move to beef up air travel security suddenly runs into heavy political turbulence. And the anthrax scare. Is there really any reason to be scared? Eye on America investigates.
This is the CBS Evening News with Dan Rather. Special extended coverage of America Fights Back. From CBS News headquarters in New York, here is Dan Rather.
Good evening. From carriers in the Arabian Sea and air bases in the Indian Ocean, U.S. aircraft bombarded Afghanistan on night 4 of Operation Enduring Freedom. Cracks are showing now in the Taliban military. U.S. ground forces are gearing up for their expected role in hunting down the terrorists, and the FBI has issued a new most wanted list, 22 international terror suspects, including Osama bin Laden. CBS News again brings you widespread coverage tonight with correspondents deployed in key locations around the globe and across the United States. We begin at the Pentagon with National Security Correspondent David Martin.
On the fourth day, B-1 and B-52 bombers struck Taliban military garrisons throughout Afghanistan. The Pentagon has not released video of the attacks, but this is what a B-52 raid against a suspected concentration of Serb troops looks like. American warplanes are now dropping cluster bombs, which disperse hundreds of bomblets over a broad area, as well as 5,000-pound bunker-busting bombs in an attempt to dig the leaders of the Taliban out of their hiding places. The aircraft carrier Roosevelt is being moved from the Mediterranean to the Indian Ocean to relieve one of the two carriers already there, so the U.S. can keep up the smoke-'em-out strategy indefinitely. The Pentagon struck 50 targets in the first 3 days of bombing, but the most important number may be the 1,200 Taliban troops reported to have defected, a significant loss for a force which numbers about 50,000 in all. The defections occurred in the north, where the Taliban is fighting a rebel army called the Northern Alliance, one of many factions the U.S. is counting on to oust the Taliban and Osama bin Laden's al-Qaeda network.
We would like to see them succeed. We would like to see them heave the al-Qaeda and the Taliban leadership that has been so repressive out of that country.
The CIA has mounted the largest covert operation since the 1980s, when it aided the so-called Afghan freedom fighters in their battle against the Soviet invasion. This time it is aiding the Northern Alliance in its war against the Taliban. At the same time, CIA agents are trying to recruit tribal leaders in southern Afghanistan to help track down bin Laden and to let American commandos set up forward operating bases from which to launch raids. One operating base for commando raids, the carrier Kitty Hawk, its decks cleared of jets to make room for helicopters, arrived off the coast of Pakistan today.
In order to launch raids, the U.S. needs accurate intelligence on bin Laden's whereabouts, and that has always been the hardest thing to come by. Dan?
At the Defense Department, David Martin. On the ground in Afghanistan, those who've been fighting the Taliban for years have a ringside seat for the air attacks in and around Kabul. The Northern Alliance of Minority Tribes Anti-Taliban Forces call themselves the United Front, and CBS's Elizabeth Palmer is with them, just north of the Afghan capital.
American warplanes thundered over Kabul tonight, pounding the capital city in what witnesses report is the heaviest attack since this campaign began. Taliban anti-aircraft guns returned fire as explosions were heard near the Kabul airport and to the west of the city, where Osama bin Laden is said to have a training camp. 250 miles to the south in Kandahar, bombs exploded once again in the Taliban spiritual center. They began falling in daylight and continued as darkness fell. But in spite of this daily barrage of American warheads, Taliban diplomats insist that Afghanistan's defense systems are still intact. On the front lines in northern Afghanistan, video shot by Lebanese television shows anti-Taliban United Front fighters sparring with their enemy. But this is not the big ground offensive everyone's expecting. The soldiers are bracing themselves, stockpiling weapons and military aid that's finally arriving from Russia, but they have a serious strategic problem in this mountainous terrain. As the soldiers of the Rustak detachment explain, they can't move forward as long as the Taliban are dug into the high ground. The solution, they say, American planes should finish off bombing the Taliban's infrastructure and start bombing their fighting positions. Yes?
Yeah.
They may get their wish. Already reports say that groups of Taliban fighters in 2 locations have been targeted by U.S. bombers. That's encouraging news for thousands of United Front soldiers who've been waiting for more than a year to advance into battle. Elizabeth Palmer, CBS News, Hoja Bahauddin, Northern Afghanistan.